For 11 long years, the disappearance of father and daughter, Colin and Riley Beckwith, on the remote, icy cliffs of Mount Hooker, lived inside the minds of climbers, locals, and anyone who heard their story like a haunting echo that refused to fade. A whisper caught between the granite walls and wind-carved ridges of the Wyoming wilderness. And although time tried to soften the edges of the tragedy, the mystery only grew sharper with each passing year, shaping itself into a chilling legend passed from campfire to campsite, from old climber to young adventurer, reminding everyone who ventured near the Wind River Range that the mountain keeps its secrets with a cold, unwavering grip. Colin Beckwith was never the reckless type, nor the type to chase danger without reason. He was a man shaped by decades of climbing, knowledgeable, patient, methodical, and deeply respectful of alpine terrain. A father who found solace in nature's harsh beauty, believing that the hard places of the world had something pure and valuable to teach those willing to listen. His daughter Riley, 17 years old in the summer of 2013, shared his curiosity for the unknown, his steady determination, and his love for the towering landscapes that tested one's courage and carved resilience into the soul. Their relationship was forged through years of shared hikes, shared climbs, shared quiet moments high above the tree line where the wind carried away the noise of ordinary life. The trip to Mount Hooker, a remote and notoriously unforgiving peak known for its colossal vertical east face, was meant to be a final father-daughter adventure before Riley left for college, a symbolic gesture of transition, a celebration of the bond they had built, and a tribute to the places that had shaped them. Their preparation was meticulous. Weeks of gear checks, physical training, weather analysis, and safety planning, because both understood that Mount Hooker demanded nothing less than absolute respect. They left with optimism, unaware that their journey toward the sublime would soon cross the boundary into tragedy. The expedition began on a crisp August morning, the kind of day that feels designed for adventure. Cold air brushing the skin, sunlight slowly spilling across the peaks, and the promise of challenge hanging in the space between footsteps. The Wind River Range stretched ahead of them, vast and indifferent, a labyrinth of forests, alpine meadows, rocky ridgelines, and hidden dangers concealed beneath the beauty. Their first day of hiking felt almost peaceful, filled with light conversation, quiet admiration for the landscape, and moments of silence that speak louder than words ever could when shared between people who understand each other without needing to explain. As they made their way deeper into the range, carrying heavy packs filled with ropes, cams, nuts, harnesses, freeze-dried food, and Riley's weatherproof sketch journal, they felt the familiar thrill of approaching something immense, something that demanded every ounce of their skill and focus. They made camp beneath a canopy of ancient pines, ate warm meals, shared stories, and studied the silhouette of Mount Hooker glowing faintly in the twilight, its vertical wall rising like a monolith carved by the gods. The second day pushed them harder. Steeper trails, thinner air, unpredictable gusts of wind, and yet every difficulty only made them more determined, more connected, more aware of the magnitude of their goal. When they finally reached the base of Mount Hooker on their second evening, the east face towered above them with a quiet, intimidating brilliance, a sheer granite wall with few weaknesses, polished smooth by centuries of storms, daring climbers to attempt its impossible geometry. That night they studied their chosen route, reviewed backup plans, tested gear again and again, and spoke little because the mountain demanded a different kind of concentration, one that came not from anxiety, but from reverence. As dawn broke on the morning of their climb, they moved with precision, clipping harnesses, tying knots, checking anchors, their breath visible in the cold air as the first rays of sunlight touched the upper rim of the cliff. They began the ascent with steady confidence, progressing upward with practiced expertise, trusting the rhythm they had spent years refining. For hours, the climb went perfectly, each hold secure, each placement solid, each movement a testament to their trust in each other. But mountains are unpredictable creatures. They shift moods without warning. Sometime after midday, the weather began to shift. A subtle change in the air. A tremor of cold weaving through the sunlight. Colin noticed it first, the way the wind began to echo strangely against the rock, the way distant clouds moved faster than they should have. Within minutes, the breeze strengthened into biting gusts. The temperature plunged. Clouds swallowed the sky. The Beckwiths exchanged a look that said everything. This storm was not one they could outrun. They began preparing to descend, but Mount Hooker does not forgive hesitation. Ice formed rapidly across the granite, turning safe holds into glassy traps. Their ropes stiffened, their fingers numbed. The wind roared like a living force hungry for footholds, pushing against them with relentless fury. No one witnessed what happened next, but years later, when experts reconstructed the scene from the evidence preserved in ice, they saw the heartbreaking truth. A slip on ice, a sudden gust, a desperate attempt to regain footing, and then a fall. Not a fall born from carelessness, but from the brutal speed of a storm that arrived too fast for even the most skilled climbers to fight. When they failed to make their scheduled check-in, concern spread quickly. Search and rescue teams mobilized, braving the harsh terrain and unpredictable weather in hopes of finding any sign of them. Volunteers combed the trails. Helicopters scanned the cliffs. Dogs searched ravines. Climbers risked their own safety to explore dangerous ledges. But the mountain, sealed under fresh snow and thick fog, hid everything. It kept the Beckwiths somewhere beyond sight, somewhere unreachable. Days turned into weeks, and eventually the search was forced to end. Their family was left with uncertainty, a void where answers should have been, a hollow ache that grew with time. Riley's friends kept her memory alive by sharing the stories of her fearless spirit, her laugh, her sketches. Colin's climbing partners remembered him as a steady hand, a careful teacher, a man who believed in respecting nature's rules, but their absence remained an open wound. And so, the story of their disappearance transformed into legend, a tale repeated in hushed tones around campfires. How a father and daughter vanished into the mountain's icy heart, swallowed by a storm so sudden that no one could have predicted it. 11 years passed. Seasons shifted like pages in a worn-out book. The mountain endured storms, sunshine, and the slow, patient melt of countless snowfalls. And then, during an unusually warm summer, something changed. Ice melted earlier and deeper than usual, revealing parts of the mountain long hidden under frozen layers. A group of climbers exploring a rarely visited gully spotted an unusual flash of color beneath a thin blanket of melting ice. At first, they thought it was debris, perhaps old equipment left behind by climbers from decades past. But when they approached and brushed away the frost, the truth struck them with chilling clarity. It was gear, modern gear. Weather-worn, but unmistakably belonging to a recent expedition. And not far from that gear lay the preserved remains of Colin and Riley Beckwith. The cold had kept them frozen in time, preserved enough to tell the story of their final hours. The position of their bodies suggested something profound. Colin had used his body to protect Riley during the fall, shielding her from the worst of the impact. His final act was one of love, a father's instinct to protect his child even when the world around them collapsed into chaos. Near them, amazingly intact, was Riley's waterproof journal. Though some pages were smeared by moisture, the final entries were legible enough to reveal the human heart inside the tragedy. She wrote about the storm, about fear creeping into her bones, about trusting her father completely, about believing they would survive because he had always found a way to keep them safe. Her words were filled with both terror and peace, the strange combination that arises when a person faces the unimaginable but is not alone. Rescue teams recovered the scene with solemn care, finally bringing closure to a family that had spent over a decade suspended between hope and despair. The discovery sparked conversations across the climbing community about safety in remote alpine environments, about the unpredictable violence of sudden weather shifts, about the limits of even the most experienced climbers. Their story became both a cautionary tale and a tribute. Climbers left flowers at trailheads, wrote dedications in summit logs, and honored the Beckwiths not as victims, but as adventurers who understood the beauty and the danger of the natural world. And above all, their story became a reminder that the wilderness, indifferent as it may seem, sometimes preserves the memories of those it takes. Not to mock human fragility, but to remind us of the courage it takes to step into the unknown. Mount Hooker held their secret for 11 years, guarding it with ice and silence, not out of malice, but because the mountains do not operate on human timelines. When the truth finally emerged, it came softly, through melting snow and shifting ice, as though the mountain was finally ready to let their story be heard. The Beckwiths' journey, though tragic, became a testament to the power of connection, the strength of family, and the human desire to reach beyond the ordinary. It reminded everyone who heard it that adventure always carries risk, that love can endure even in the harshest conditions, and that some stories, no matter how painful, deserve to be remembered not for how they ended, but for the courage and devotion that defined them. In the end, the Beckwiths did not become ghosts of the mountain. They became part of its story, part of its memory, part of the great tapestry of human experience woven into the cliffs and valleys of the world. And though their final moments were frozen in ice, their legacy remains warm, alive, and deeply human, echoing through every climber who dares to chase the sublime, knowing that beauty and danger are forever intertwined among the towering bones of the earth.